Well, I've got this shared right now, so I need to stop sharing. Pardon me? I'm sharing. I need to stop sharing. Ah, there. That should be recording it. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak about something that I get very passionate about, which is using digital techniques to do flat pattern design and flat pattern alterations. So, this is locked up again. There we go. Today, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself and the journey that I went on, and then a lot of the talk is going to be about all the pieces came together and what you can do with them and things. The first leg of all the pieces is to actually have a digital dress form where you can actually design and lay cloth on yourself, but you're in the computer. And the second part of the second leg of the program is how to handle digital patterns so that you're not cutting out paper, which is kind of wasteful, and making puzzles, which is kind of wasteful. So this wasn't the introduction that I was expecting. It's the one that I had used normally says that I've been sewing most of my life. My mom was a home ec teacher, and so she made my clothes when I was growing up. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate it because everybody else got to go to the store and buy them. But so I remember graduating with my degree, from undergraduate school and getting a job with IBM. Hey, I can go to Macy's and buy my clothes. And it was an exciting moment until I started trying on clothes at Macy's because the arms were up here and the legs were way short. And so it's like I finally, in my early 20s, got to appreciate what my mother had been doing for me all those years. And since I had been sewing since I was a child, I could actually make my clothes. And in those days, altering patterns was easy because I was really tall, but I was very skinny. I was not the full woman that I am today, but I was tall and skinny. So altering a pattern meant that I would lengthen the crotch, lengthen the legs, lengthen the arms, and it would fit. Now, there were times that I weren't happy with the patterns that I was finding. I couldn't get the design that I kind of had in my mind. But I had nice clothes that fit, that went into industry. I could go into industry and not be embarrassed. So that all worked really well until I hit about 30. And finally finished graduate school and was not very active and just sitting a lot. And then I married and had kids, and the body was not just tall and skinny anymore. It was tall still, but it was quite rounded. So I had no idea of, or it was like I was trying things, and there's got to be a better method. So I had been hired at Hewlett Packard up here in Santa Rosa, and I got contacted about a program called Expanding Your Horizons. It was out in the 80s. And it was this program for junior high girls to introduce them to non-traditional careers for women. And so I was approached and asked, would you do a workshop with some young girls? Because being an engineer at that time and a woman was rare. It was not. So let's introduce them to that. I said, sure. And so I came up with a little demonstration, etc., and had to walk my students from Bikini Hall over to the engineering center. So I'm tromping around campus with these 13-year-old girls, and I passed, you guessed it, Garcia Hall. And there was a sign out front that said, Consumer Family Studies. And my son said, that sounds a little bit like home ec to me. Maybe they have sewing classes there. Maybe I can learn something. So I then went to the catalog, which was paper at that time, that's how long ago this was, and found that yes, they had a fashion studies department, and yes, they had flat pattern design, and yes, they had all these other things that were interesting. Sound maybe I can learn something. So that fall, I took my first flat pattern class from Judy Jackson, who was an amazing teacher, and isn't this working? Cheryl?
Is it showing on your screen?
No.
Okay, then there it is.
Not too far. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
So, the thing about flat pattern work that amazed me is that patterns were not biblical. They weren't cast in stone. You could do things with them. You could move darts. You could let darts out. You could have fullness and all kinds of stuff that you could do. But the way we were doing it in the class is we were cutting up these little pieces of paper, which just drove me crazy because I have been working in geometries for at least a decade in the industry where you were not cutting paper. You actually had digital tools to do this, and you could do it on the computer. And it's neat, and so I, at that point, acquired my first digital tool for pattern making and design, which was to use a digital drafting tool. Adobe Illustrator is a digital drafting tool, AutoCAD, ProCAD, and there's a new company out of Britain that makes this suite called Affinity, which you can actually own. It's the Adobe suite. Yeah, she says, yeah. It's the Adobe suite that you actually own and you do not have to pay the monthly subscription or whatever the subscription is. For me, I was lucky enough in industry that I had access to AutoCAD. And so I've been using an older version of AutoCAD for years. But the thing about digital tools is that here's an example of where I was taking a simple bodice that you have designed or acquired, and you can then rotate the dart up into the shoulders. Armstrong gives you, we were using Helen Armstrong's book for flat pattern design, which I think you're still using. It's got everything you ever want to know about how to make whatever you make. So she has the methodology for doing princess darts of how to manipulate the bust point. So you can just do that, and then lo and behold, you've gone to a princess scene. So that was a really great tool for just manipulating patterns and doing things. The other thing I found you could do, let's see if this would work. Yes, is that you can actually do actual pattern modifications there too, in that you can scan. They have flatbed scanners. They still have flatbed scanners where you can take a full-size pattern and scan it into your computer. And here's an example of what I did. Is there was a jacket that I really liked called it was a mountain pullover. So it was a pullover type hoodie, out of fleece is what I wanted. And it had a hood, so it was really nice and warm, but it had kangaroo pockets in it. And that was all nice. I liked the design of it, I liked the fit of it, but I do not like to pull anything on my head. I don't do head things. I don't pull stuff. I want a zipper. So I scanned this pattern in, and then I modified the front so that instead of having a kangaroo pocket, you have just a straight front where you can put a zipper all the way up. And I took the kangaroo pocket and just put them in as side pockets, and then printed it out, and it's like one of my favorite coats. Even where, in fact, one Christmas I made this pattern for my whole family, so we all have. But you can take the original pattern that you have there, change it, change the size, make it fit. Did that. The problem I saw with this, I really was enjoying doing this, and the freedom that it gave me was that it was kind of wasteful, in that if you're gonna do something, you have to print it out, you sew it up in muslin, you try it, you tweak it, then you say, oh, I really need to do this, so you go and change it, you can change the paper, but you print it out again, or you maybe tweak that, you cut up some more muslin, and you end up with this pile of muslin. My husband loved it. Yes, he likes the rags, and it was like, oh, are you making anything today? But for me, it was kind of a waste. But my crowning glory in all of this was in 2012 when I made my daughter's wedding dress. And this was a real feat, because my husband and I, we live in Santa Rosa. She and her fiance were graduate students at UC Boulder. So the fittings had to be done periodically, and so she came home, like in the summer, she came home when he proposed. She came home in the summer, she had drawn, she knew what she wanted, so she had drawn it out. She wanted this type of bodice, and she wanted embroidery whales and dolphins here, and it was quite elaborate. And so we started doing the fitting, and I developed a sloper for her by hand, using Armstrong, and then started doing the fitting. And I only fit her to like the hips because everything else just dropped from there. So I was not wasting tons and tons of fabric, but it was just. But since this was fitted, it really had to work. And I think we got together on Mother's Day. She came home and did the final fitting. Took a real cool trip took the ferry down to San Francisco, hit Brightex, got the fabric, and it was really cool. But the thing is, like, okay, it's May. The wedding's at August. You do not gain an ounce, you do not lose anything. And it's like, okay. And it worked. She and Andrew showed up at the end of July. There was some minor tweaking, but the results are there. And it was like, yay! Then came the draping class. I took a draping class from Mira, excellent, and it just really kind of opened my eyes to the idea of draping outside of yourself, of having something standing still there. And we went through this process where we just, we carved it. Remember, we carved it with the kitchen knife and everything, and then we made an over sloper, an over like torso that we kind of zipped up, that fit us pretty closely, and then you put it over this foam and zipped it up, and it was kind of close to you because it was foam covered with a sloper that was pretty close to you. And it was like, yeah, but you're limited in your accuracy by as accurate as that form was. And it just started me thinking, could there be a way of getting a more accurate dress form than that? Meanwhile, I started seeing articles. There was an article in Threads, and there was an article somewhere else where 3D body scan was up and coming. ICs were cheap enough at this point. They can make IR infrared sensors cheap enough that people were putting them together and in various arrays and taking enough pictures of the body that they could get a 3D body scan. And somebody back in Washington, D.C. there was an article in Threads around there where somebody back in Washington, D.C. had acquired one of these and was scanning and then making foam dress forms out of the scan. I thought, that's amazing. That's good. That's accurate. I love it. And it turns out that this is only a third body scan, international body scanning ever was held for the first and only time in the United States of America in November of 2013. And it was in LA, it was in Long Beach. Wow, you can't get much closer to Santa Rosa in the world than to go to Long Beach. So I went down to that and paid a little student fare price because I was a student at the JC at the time, and went to this body scanning conference to see what this was all about. Took my little jump drive and go from booth to booth. There were like people there from all over the world. There were all different kinds of scanners that people had, and they were where you could stand on like a little turntable, and the camera was out there, and you would rotate. There were ones where you would stand there, and the camera would rotate around you, and then there were ones where there was a booth where you go in like TSA, like getting on a plane, but instead of doing all of this, it was just a booth, and they were in the walls. And so I was like, oh. And two companies really stood out to me, and they turned out to be rivals of each other. One was called TC Squared, and the other was called SciStream. And it turns out that SciStream actually had started as a part of TC Squared, and then they broke off because of some technological discussions and differences, moved across the street and started another company. And they were very, very eager to get their product out. So they were giving them to schools at the time. And one of the schools that they gave them to is Cal Poly Pomona, which is where Alice was in school at the time. And so through Alice, I met the dean of the department chair, had a long conversation with him about what I was interested in doing, and he invited me out to do a real body scan. I mean, yeah, when you're at the conference, you don't take your clothes off. You just kind of just stand there and they look at you. So there was a representation from one of the companies that I went to and got scanned at the conference. But Muditha, who's the department chair, actually had it set up to do the real body scan. And so I went to Pomona, got my body scan, and he did the manipulation of the mesh, which is the mathematical form that you really are there, and came up with my first dress form. And so I came back with a dress form on my jump drive, and then went to the applied technology department where I know a bunch of the people there because the JC, when HP laid off a bunch of people back in the early 2000s, the JC hired a bunch of people in the early 2000s to take up that technological talent. And so Vince Birch is one of the professors there and knew him, and he had just gotten his hands on a 3D printer. And so I was able to print myself. I finally had a digital dress form, or a form that was accurate, had my tummy, had my high hip. But it's not something that you could really design with. I mean, it's not, you can't pin into it, and it took forever, really forever to print this, and you had to kind of sit there because 3D printers at the time were like recalcitrant. We had to make sure the threads were right and everything. So, no. But while I was sitting there talking to Vince, he convinced me, he says, if you're going to be working in this at all, you need to take a class that helps you understand the mesh, which is how you go from the scan to the dress form. And so he suggested I take a class called 3ds Max, which is taught there at junior college. It's part of the Adobe suite. And when you talk about a scan, what you really are getting is a billion points in space. You know, you have these sensors that are measuring certain areas, and then the computer essentially knits it all together and draws a line between all the different billions of points that it's taken, and that is called the mesh. That is what you really get from a scanner, is the mesh. And then what you see is they put what they call skin over it. So it looks not like a mesh, but like a person, what have you. So I took the class called 3ds Max, which I learned how to manipulate the mesh, cut the mesh, clean up things, and how to cut them. When you're cutting the mesh, like here I have the crotch defined so that I can actually have my personal crotch curve. Yeah, right there, I got it. But I have to show this slide. Okay.
When you say mesh, are you saying a digital mesh?
A digital mesh. Yeah, it's like the digital mesh is the connection of all those billions of points that the computer actually did. The sensors have their area, and they have a mesh, and you in the scanner can tell it how close to make the mesh. Of course, the closer you get it, the more time it takes. The bigger computer you need, that kind of stuff. So you need to judge it there. I'm not sure how to do this, but I need that. This is actually a movie. I don't know how to, and it's not, I'm not getting that. There we go. Okay, so I took this class in summer of 2015 with a plethora of gamers. So I spent the summer building bombs, fighting wars, dragons everywhere, spaceships everywhere. And so for the final exam, we had to build a 20-second animation. Nothing, no other criteria. It could be whatever we wanted. Finally, yes! So I gave a shout out to myself. And here is my final exam there, where I really talk about my love of sewing. Shout out to pattern making, a shout out to quilting, and of course, a ton of fabric everywhere. This is my ideal place. And then my beauty, my love, my sewing machine. That was my final exam. But while I was taking 3ds Max and thinking about things, I found in 3ds Max a very rudimentary. I don't want to do that I came to the decision that coming out into the real world was not only not necessary but wasteful. So you could then use the digital world to do everything, including the muslins and the what do you call it, the intermediate fittings, etc. And so with that in mind, and the fact that Tailoring had moved up to what they call an SS20 as opposed to an SS14 scanner, and they were dumping the SS14s, and 14 sensors sounded good to me. So I got it for a really, really good price. And so I actually acquired the scanner, which allowed me then to, this was my first business plan of what I could do with everything, where you had the scanner. Oh, by the way, I've been talking a lot. Are there any questions? I don't mean to be, I just keep going. So,
We're fascinated, keep going.
Yeah.
okay, keep going, okay. So you have the scanner, which gives you the two arms of what you're doing. You come out with the mesh, and you come out with an incredible number of measurements that the computer generates while it's doing the scan. And from the mesh, you can then use that as an avatar for the intermediate filling, sizing and fitting of things. And from the data, you can actually use that. And what I had done is I used C# which is programming language, to code up Armstrong's methodology, so that you could then use Armstrong's methodology to come up with slopers, or you could scan in a commercial pattern and use that too to help in fitting yourself, because you're actually going to be fitting yourself. There's no, it's you. You've stood there for 30 seconds, it's you. But the third digital tool that I came across was, I was using 3ds Max, which gamers use. There's some rudimentary sewing in there because most of their characters have clothes on. So there was ways of manipulating cloth to do that. It was really hokey and very time consuming. And I remember in 2019, I'm up in Puyallup at the Sew Expo, and I run into a friend of mine who knows about what I'm doing and everything. She goes, "You have got to see this program. It's called Clo3D." And she talked to me about it, and I'm thinking, that sounds way too good to be true. But it wasn't. And so the third digital tool that has been just immediate, just unbelievably important in my journey is Clo3D. And it's a fashion design software out of Korea. And it allows you to create, visualize, manipulate and actually animate any garment that you want. It's like what you think you can actually do. It has internal avatars, male and female, of different kind of body types, and it allows you to actually add your measurements, so you can kind of change it a little bit, so it's a little more accurate to who you are. They have things called alignment marks that will come up around the avatar, which allow you to, like, you've got this square, this 2D thing, and this is one of their internal 2D t-shirts that you can then align with the avatar. I don't know if you can see the red between the things. That's actually the sewing line. You actually can tell it where to sew it all together. And then, I love it. You hit this little sewing machine that says it's sew, and boom, it sews it together and drapes it on the avatar. It's like, this is beautiful, this is wonderful. And so what you really want to do is not use their avatar, because we just go through all of this to get who we are, but we want to use our own avatar. So we can build that and put it into Cloud. And the first step in doing that is that here's a client. The first thing you do is you come in my office and okay, take your clothes off, and then I put dots on them that mark where the real landmarks are, where the real bust point is, where the shoulders are. I think there's like 14 of them that I use. And then they step into the scanner for 30 seconds, and the computer tells me where it thinks they are, and I go, no, it's really here. Oh, it's really there. Sorry. Yeah. And it's pretty compliant. That so we now have very accurate measurements to your body. The second thing they do in the avatar build is remove webbing. This is the difference between my older scanner and newer scanners, is that because of the placement of the sensors, you get what's called webbing. And so you see it like here in the crotch, where it can't really discern between where the body is, especially if I'm scanning a client with large legs. You get a lot of webbing there, or clients with arms, because you have to stand in such a way that you get the whole body in the scan, so there's webbing. But back to 3ds Max, it allows you to manipulate the mesh, so that you can actually clean that up. You get something a little more like you are. So I hope this works. This is cool. This is so cool. The third thing that you want to do is that, now, if you're going to try to fit something that looks like this, it's kind of hard, because that's not a natural position. And we've talked about, I want it so that I can move it, and Clo has a rigger in it where you can put in your file that you have, and it will rig it. But the person that was teaching me Clo says, don't use it, it's not very accurate. And the reason it's not accurate is that it assumes that everything is symmetrical. It assumes that your right shoulder and your left shoulder are the same height. It assumes that your right hip and your left hip, and I have a high hip. It assumes that your legs are straight down, and as we get older, they're not. So she suggested an amazing thing, which is that Adobe has a free from Adobe, I know, unheard of, website which allows you to load up your mesh file, and it will rig it for you. But the thing about the Adobe site is it asks you where the shoulders are. It asks you where the groin is, so it can do the hips. It asks you where these things are, so you get a much more accurate avatar out of that. And once again, I'm in the world of gamers, and so it's called Mix Them Up site has, the way you test it is you kind of drop an animation on it, like you animate it, and then you drop an animation on it. Like, they have at least 150 animations, and they're all people doing judo and flipping around and stuff. But they have one called the catwalk. So I said, ooh, nice. So let's see if we can get this to work. So, trying to get this to play.
So you had to be a mad scientist to arrive.
I'm sorry?
You had to be a mad scientist to arrive at your destination. I don't know if you all this.
Engineering mind.
I'm not sure I'd call myself a mad scientist. It's just sort of, I'm more of a, well, what if?
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I'm mad. I'm just,
No,
I don't think I'm asking for anything unreasonable.
You're very creative at this.
Curious engineer.
Well, yeah. Very determined.
I cannot, yes, that is true. Like, I am a very determined woman. And I cannot get this, there we go. So,
Oh, wow.
you get the avatar, it's just fine. And the first time I saw this, I just crackled up. And what I'm looking at is the placement of the bones, how the arms work, and is the crotch correct? I mean, there's actually science going on here. I know it's hysterical, funny, but
Extra joints.
I think she's got joints for us.
for everybody
Yeah.
to give you the full view. So now I have a 3D rendition of any body that moves. So you can then take that and import it into Club. So instead of using their avatars and trying to change the measurement points, etc., you have yourself. And so you can see in Club it's still rigged, and you can actually move the arms and the body to a more normal position so that you're actually fitting. You know, you're standing more like in a normal position. I know when we teach you, it was like, that was way back, way back. So, on the pattern work size, the scanner allows you to ask for measurements in these little programs that you can write. So here I have the measurements for all the slopers that you can get, and it comes out, and you tweak it. Of course you tweak it, of course, I tweak it, but there's not just the one for scanners. I have one for clients have asked me for a scan for apostrophe patterns, so that I get their, for ditto form, for people who want to get the dress form, they have a different set. For Susie Fur, you know, people will come to me and say, oh, I need these measurements, not those. And that's cool. And so you can get any set of measurements you want. And if they haven't got it, you can write your own. So, the other thing is what happens when you get a ton of data is that other things fall out. And when I was doing this, this was about the time when I had taken fashion analysis, and this allows you to get a body graph, which is sort of a 2D representation of yourself, so that you can see what things are flat, something you might want to enhance, something you might want to diminish, things like that. And a shout out to Lyra, who was kind enough to let me use her class as a guinea pig as I was writing this, so thank you. So this is also available. It just kind of falls out. But the big thing that I was looking for is the sloper development. So now what I can do is use the Armstrong frames as from before, change the frames to what I want so that you're getting the double darts you want, and coming out with a bodice sloper. You can then take that bodice sloper, put it in a Club, no paper involved, no material involved. My husband is very upset. But, and then drape it in Clo, and then Clo allows you some semblance to change things as long as you're not breaking a line on a pattern, so that if I say, oh, this is a little too long, I can move that back, I can change sort of the curvature of the arm in Clo and tweak on it. But my biggest change that I see that I make on people is that the cup sizes are wrong.
Right.
And so I make large bust adjustments, small bust adjustments, by just taking what I have in clothes, putting it back in AutoCAD, doing a large or small bust adjustment, coming back. And so you end up with a really accurate rendition of a sloper for people. The other one is the pants sloper, which I think is like the greatest invention ever, because I start with Armstrong's frame, but I do not do her rendition. I'm sorry, yes.
Is Armstrong a computer program?
No, it's a textbook.
Oh,
It's called Flat Pattern.
Yeah, flat pattern
Design.
flat pattern.
Yeah, it's about that thick, and she goes through all the techniques of how to do the change, do the flat pattern design.
is Armstrong the name of the author?
Yeah, Helen Joseph Armstrong. Is her name. I think we probably have a copy here in the library, but it's the book that a lot of colleges use to teach flat pattern, and I know we do, and I know they do at a couple of other schools.
And I forget how many editions there are, but there are many.
There's like 13.
So they continue to
Yeah.
find all the errors.
Any other questions? Yes. Okay. So I'm using Armstrong gives you for her thing. She builds a frame, which gives you the length of the garment and then different widths in different places. And so you have like the waist width, the ab width, the hip, and this is the crotch curve, and that's the knee. I added thigh because I just wanted to get a sense of how big, where the legs are. Because, you know, it's one thing if your thighs are this big, but your legs are over here or over there, so I added that in there. She goes through this whole machination of trying to build a crotch curve. We don't have to, because we actually have the client's crotch curve. Just took it right from there. And it allows you to do things like this, where you have a really nice fitted pair of pants. Like that. So, almost done. Not boring. Okay, wanted to go through a real rendition of it. This is Alice Miller, as you guys know. She came in, and you can see the dots. This is taken afterwards because the dots have moved. But the dots, you can see where the landmarks are. She jumps in the scanner, 30 seconds scanning. We come out with all the measurements. This is the sloper that we end up building for her using the method that I've been talking about. And ending up giving her a pattern, and this is a sundress that she made using that. So it was sort of like, oh yeah, this works, it works. This is a total master set, pattern set that I work with, torsos, sleeves, bodices, pants, and skirts. And people say, well, what do you do with it? And I said, well, you can create designs that I did with my daughter's wedding dress. The thing I use a lot for is the modified commercial pattern. And I don't even modify them that much anymore, because I have blocks that I like I have a princess block that fits me really well that I've gotten from my sloper. I can just modify the block to the line art of the patterns. But you can modify commercial patterns where if you've got a new pattern, you can scan it in, overlay the sloper, and then change the shoulders and things that to do that. And you can also alter ready to wear. This is my younger daughter who was, of course, in the wedding. And we went to David's bridal because the joke was we had a bridesmaids in every state because my daughter graduated from Puget Sound and all her friends, scattered to the winds all over the country. And so we went to David's bridal because you could go to a David's bridal anywhere and do that. But David's bridal assumes that you're a B cup. Nobody in my family is a B cup. So I had modified Andrea's dress so that it looked really nice on her, even though she's not B. So here we are. Now I can come out and say, say, this is, how do I change cameras here?
Yep, video, hit into Zoom, and then hit the video button.
I'm not getting this.
So you need to stop sharing.
Stop share. Okay.
Then you're on Zoom.
Yes.
Down at the bottom left, it
Oh,
says
video.
video.
Ah, I'm sorry. So this camera, right?
It should be the IP phone.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So now back. So
It's not showing. Is it showing on yours?
yeah.
Okay, we having the same problem where it's not.
Okay. I can just. Yeah. You're getting it right. Okay. We'll just go back to share. Maybe. Okay. This locks up. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. So, this is a fabric that I got last Christmas at the raffle, and I was trying to decide what to make out of it. I'm moving away from trousers to skirts, but I wanted something intermediate. So I used the Armstrong book to, she says, how do you turn a pair of trousers, which I have a really nice fitting pair of trousers, sloper, into culotte. So this, I went through her technique of doing that, changing this into that. And then I said, I like fullness, I like swishies. You know, I've always been a princess, I like to twirl. So I did add some more fullness and came out with the, I wanted to use not a fitted waistband, so that's why it's a different color up there. It's more of a elastic waistband. And so these are they, and I'm working on these at the retreat. And later on, some people said, you know, that would look really good with a black shirt, black t-shirt. Don't have a black t-shirt, but I have a t-shirt kit. And my t-shirt kit consists of a pattern from the Tilton sisters. Yeah, I took their Marcy Tilton's t-shirt class, I don't know how many years ago. And from that I got a pattern, scanned it in, and fitted that to me, so that's my t-shirt sloper. And then about, what was it, 2 years ago, Cheryl, when you did the neckline thing?
I think it's before COVID.
It was pre-COVID? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Back some time ago, Cheryl did a meeting where she had all these different necklines, and she sewed them up, and we all tried them on, we saw what we liked and stuff like that. I thought, this is cool. So I went and got the patterns for that, and there's like 20 necklines that we can have, and they're all scaled, etc., like that. So you can now take the t-shirt pattern and then just sort of simply block off this part and then drop in the neckline you want, scale it up, and you're there. So here's some variations that I've done. This is the fitted Tilton t-shirt pattern of how it worked for me. And here's some variations that I've done where you have a boat neck, and then you can say, oh, I don't really like that. I have a sweet light t-shirt, and then I swim a lot in the summer, which is why I'm begging you to do that swimsuit class. And so I have a swimming cover-up that I just took a t-shirt, put some pockets in it, made it long, and then I can have my suit on and drift around town, do all my errands, and then end up at the pool. It's all good. So, so with the current t-shirt, I just took the pattern, and I wanted a little more fullness in here, so I changed that, and I wanted 3/4 length sleeves, so I changed that. And I was working on this at the fair back in August, and was talking to Cheryl, and she goes, you know, you should rotate that dart down into the waist because it gives you a little, it's a more flattering look. I said, okay, let's try it. And we did. I think it looks great. Thank you, Cheryl, for your tip. And basically, that's it. In conclusion, there are a bunch of people. Nobody walks alone. there are a bunch of people that have really helped me out in my endeavors to do this over the last couple of decades, and I truly thank them for their input. And anybody I forgot, I am totally sorry, but I'm a full woman. Are there any questions, please? Yes, Alice.
Well, I have a kind of a technical question. You talked about, having to do an interim change, and after you did the flow, you had to go into an Adobe product
Well, I go back to AutoCAD, but you can go into the Adobe Code.
to set the actual, set points in the avatar. The avatar,
No, you set the landmarks are set right after scaling.
right,
And then flow has nothing to do with it. Are you talking about the
oh,
grading?
maybe it's getting into flow and it has to be somewhere corrected. There was a correction that you had to make manually in between the two programs.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't.
Said you go into Adobe to get correct points and then rescan it into close.
I know for like if